GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the GERE Radio Network.
Welcome everyone, this is Sleazy, and welcome everyone to our 8th anniversary show. I just want to let you know, this episode is just gotten so big, it had to span across 2 full episodes. Tonight we have Ryan Williams on the show, as well as the legendary JC Money, the boss of GERE Network. So join us throughout our entire 4-hour journey through these 2 episodes. Part 1 starts right now. So, Fat Man.
Who are you?
Who are you? You're on my screen.
Oh, it's some bitch.
That's not a good thing to say to Ryan. Jeez.
Oh, hi, bitch.
Wait, who are you? Is that JC Money?
Who? I don't know who.
Fuck?
I don't know who that is. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I was just sitting here innocently watching, just the best opening matches of WrestleMania history. And I was very curious on whether or not, just really quickly to open the show, like what WrestleMania opening match or matches were your favorite?
Bret Owen.
I mean, WrestleMania 31 is probably my favorite.
You know what? I'm going to probably say WrestleMania 31 would be mine, too. Why would that be your favorite there, Sleazy?
I don't know. A ladder match to start the show, and it's featuring some of my favorite guys, you know?
Like who?
Oh, I don't know. There's that one guy. Luke something?
Moxley was there. He was there in that.
Yeah, Moxley was there. He's an AEW guy.
He's an AEW guy. Who else could have been in there? Who else could have been in that match that I think is an AEW? I know. Here's a hint. I beat him for the NEW Heavyweight Championship in 2009, and then he beat me in the Fantasy Football Championship the following year. What the hell was his name?
It was Luke something, wasn't it?
His name was Mark, because you're a bunch of fucking Marks.
You know, the funny thing is I have been waiting to talk to you about this one, Fat Man, because let me set the scene. And Sleazy, you knew exactly where I was going with this. I commend you for picking up right away and going along with the shtick. What in the blue hell were you thinking that day on that post, man? I have to ask. Did you know who you were talking? Do you know what I'm referencing? Have you busted his balls about it a lot?
I've only talked to him once about it since the day it happened.
I honestly don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay, so
neither do I. I want stories here.
Okay.
Well, let's get right into it. Let's get right into it right after we go to the wrestling show.
Hold on a second. Am I not on the network? Do I not run the network that you share this podcast on? And you're going to interrupt me for your introduction? Holy coaching moment in the corporate world. Fat Man, Sleazy, Buck. You got JC Money on the goddamn show for once.
Finally.
Go ahead and you're going to cut me off?
You're damn right I am.
Terry Cadillac's bitch ass. Oh. Actually, you cut me off. No, actually, he kind of did, if you think about it. But anybody else couldn't cut me off. Now you're really going to cut me off of my damn network? I'm just kidding, man. Go ahead and cut me off.
Welcome, everyone. This is Sleazy.
This is the Fat Man.
And welcome, everyone, to another wonderful episode. Blue Smock Nancy, they're awesome. They let us use that wonderful song on Silly Differences. You can find them on iTunes and Spotify. Today, we are here, and we've got the boss. The boss is in the building. JC Money, John Cimino is here with us.
Okay. I know I made a Hellcat joke earlier. The boss, that's a Hellcat gimmick. That's the last thing I want. Is anybody saying, "Oh, now he's trying to take the boss gimmick from him"?
I'm giving you that
again or whatever. I'm trying to avoid all that. I bust his balls. Now I'm not mad at him anymore.
Yeah, okay. I am, but that's beside the point. So let's get into the story. Ryan Williams is also here. He's going to say, "Hey, yo."
Hey, yo.
Thank you. But we need to get into the story of what happened about a year and a half ago. I think it was almost.
Okay. Yes. So it was on my personal Facebook page, and I had reshared a post that WWE put out there about your favorite opening WrestleMania matches. And Fat Man commented Bret Owen. But I commented that WrestleMania 31 happened to be my favorite, because of the then Luke Harper, now known again as Brody Lee. It was just kind of like a little like, haha, whatever to him. And, a bunch of us got on there, WrestleMania 31, WrestleMania 31, WrestleMania 31, just basically being marks, just to fuck around. And and then Brody Lee himself comments on there, WrestleMania 31, or something to that effect. And I don't know what possessed Fat Man to reply in the manner that he did, but Fat Man over here decided he talked to Brody Lee, then known as Luke Harper, on a post about a match that he himself was involved in, like a fan.
Yeah.
And not only was he talking to him like a fan, he was talking to him like a fan, like Brody Lee was the fan, and like Fat Man wrestled at WrestleMania.
I'm the Hall of Famer. What do you
about wrestling than you ever did, son? And blah, 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 and this and this. And now, mind you, I didn't come back into this conversation until about 10 text messages later by a bunch of people like, who the fuck is this guy that's talking to Brody this way? And I'm like, what? What's going on? And then I look and I see that. And I laughed at my desk at the shoot job for 10 minutes straight. I'm laughing. My jaw hurts. I'm laughing so hard. Because Brody's like, well, I think I know a thing or two about these WrestleMania opener matches or something like that. Batman comments something to the effect of, I know more in wrestling than you'll ever forget.
I honestly do not remember this, to be perfectly fair. I don't.
I remember, or he says, I know more about wrestling than you ever will, son. And everybody's like, who the fuck? Does everybody, are you kidding me? And meanwhile,
everyone thought it was a rib, for one.
Meanwhile, Brody's texting me, is like, dude, I'm just going to keep fucking with him. I'm like, go ahead. This is great. This is compelling. This was my Netflix for the day at work.
You're welcome for the entertainment, but I don't remember.
What the hell were you thinking, dude?
I don't remember it. Like, I don't.
You told him you wished his mother would have swallowed you. You told Brody.
See,
now keep in mind,
I told the PG version because I don't remember the exact screenshots, but I think Sleazy.
Yeah, I do have them. This was my
like
trump card.
I would say.
Yeah. So the thing about the story that makes it, I guess, funnier is the fact that. So John's shoot name is on his Facebook. He doesn't use, obviously, Luke Harper or anything. He has his own shoot Facebook, and he's friends with JC and a bunch of other workers up here because obviously he's from Rochester. So he was talking to John as if he were just a fan. That's what makes it funny. I think the
thing about it is regardless of whether or not he used his shoot name or one of his work names, like his profile picture is him.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Like it's legitimately him with his kid.
I honestly don't remember this, but it sounds like something I do. Oh, I am.
It is my favorite Sleazy and the Fat Man story that I like to share, and I had never been on up until today, never been on the podcast before. So
Yeah.
When it comes up in memories, I'm gonna tag you.
Okay, do it.
I'm gonna tag you in it so you can see it.
Because I honestly don't remember this. I've talked so much shit on Facebook to so many people, I just lose track.
Do you remember the old Godfather quote? He's a man that just says, kill me till one day, eventually somebody does. That is Fat Man in a nutshell.
Well, he's still alive, so I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, I said someday.
For now. All right. That's fair.
So, John, we have a lot of weird intertwining history.
As I have come to find out, yes.
Yeah. So, Fat Man.
You both like hermaphroditic porn?
That is one piece.
Okay.
But actually, he's actually intertwined with.
I got kids, man. I can't do that shit.
He's got cut off, man. Well, actually, if they cut it off, it's no longer hermaphroditic porn.
All right.
Okay.
We're going somewhere.
So, Fat Man, remember the first day we went to training?
Yes.
At a shitty place called UW.
Oh, the day I broke my neck and back? No, I don't remember that day at all.
Good. He remembers it well, apparently. John was at that show.
I don't remember anybody breaking their neck, so I'm guessing it must have happened before I came to the arena.
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
In fact, Fat Man was already gone by then because he went home. He didn't realize he broke his neck. In fact, if he'd probably known that, this story probably would have been a lot different. But it was also the same day that Tylicious
got fucked up
bad. And come to find out, John was the one that was screaming to get everyone away from ringside that wasn't a part of the show. Didn't even know it was you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was me. That was oh Lord. Must we talk about UW? But I briefly worked there, and I want to say that particular show, I think it was my second show there. I only worked 3 shows. And Terry didn't pay me, but Al Scott did. Because I wouldn't work there. I wouldn't step foot in there if I wasn't getting any sort of compensation for it. But even now they couldn't afford me. Like, you think you think that new owner got carnied out of $20K for the freaking promotion. It's going to cost more than $20K to get me to step foot in that fucking hellhole. But anyways, that second show was, I don't exactly remember what happened because that was the main, and it was Titus. I call Tylicious, Titus Smith. He rolled with me. He was my tag team partner in NEW under that name. But Titus was in there with
his wife,
Riot.
Yeah, it was his wife and Riot.
Yeah, and so I don't know if he got his bell rung when Riot did his little spinny Michinoku driver thing or whatever the hell he was doing. I don't know. I wasn't watching the match. I was back there in the backstage bullshitting with Steve Cruz. And all of a sudden, my ex-wife was in the crowd, and she had texted me and was like, dude, Rob's hurt. Titus is hurt. And I'm like, like, what happened? And she's like, you need to get out here because Terry's not doing a damn thing about any people, and people are about the people going in the ring, and there are people in the ring all over him. And I'm like, is this a work or shoot? She goes, no, it's definitely not a work. Get out here. So I come out there, and I look, and I might be exaggerating at this point because it was long ago and a whole world of experiences happened since then. But I felt like there may have been 5 to 10 more people in the ring than there should have been for that situation. And none of them were like UW people. None of them were. It was like Titus was laying in the ring. His bell was freaking rung. He was gone. And his wife was in there. And then like a bunch of other people I'd never freaking seen are like, oh, hey, how are you doing? Okay. And I get in there. I said, get the fuck out of the ring. I was like, if you, I don't know who any of you are. Get the fuck out of here. Seriously. And where I'm looking for Terry at this point in time, and Terry's just pushing chairs and, moving them away to avoid the situation. I looked at him. I was like, yo, you need to get these people out of here and fucking take care of this shit. And so then he, just kind of like murmured and started shooing people away and whatever. And, but my ex-wife did not go back for my last show there. I didn't even want to go back for my last show after that, but I made a commitment to go. And I did it, and I put over a young and up-and-comer by the name of Deacon on my way out. So that was that story. UW was a fucking shitty place. It still is. But.
I only worked 2 other times after that. One was for I got pulled into it was a lumberjack thing where they didn't have enough people for a lumberjack match. Because
why book it?
Well,
they booked the shitty wet angle with a ring announcer and a fan that no one cared about.
Exactly. So there were.
Why not book a lumberjack match without lumberjacks? It's very UW of them.
Yeah. Half the roster
lumberjacks,
left. Yeah.
How many lumberjacks?
7.
Okay, we're tied then. We did a lumberjack match one time. We only had 7. There was 9 people on the show. We had 7 of us for the lumberjacks.
Well, here's the thing about that. There were 7 workers around the ringside. 5 of them were heels. 2 of them were faces. So 2 were on one side. The other 5, including me, who was a heel at the time, working the manager gimmick, of course. So I'm sitting there.
Percy Pringle?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. With the cane.
I can see that.
And all I did was anytime anyone got near me, I would hug the ring post and scream like Chuck Taylor used to scream. Like that, type of thing. And nobody could keep, it popped everyone around ringside. But it was the stupidest match in the world. And then the last time I went was when, Krieger was on his return loop, so to speak. He was trying to get ready after he got the knee injury recovered.
Yeah, rebuild this house. I remember that.
Exactly. I still have the shirt somewhere, but
I have it too. Somewhere.
But yeah, he did UW for a show. He worked Steve Cruz, in fact, in a quick tussle. Basically told Terry to go fuck himself. We're doing 25 in the ring and you're going to suck it. So that was my favorite probably memory of UW was, House telling Terry to suck it afterwards.
Well, my favorite memory of UW hasn't come yet.
Yeah. Well, when it closes, right?
When it folds, that'll be my favorite memory ever. That fucking place.
So let's talk about the history of JC Money. What started the journey? Who is JC Money? When did you start? Where did you get trained and by who?
Well, memory lane now. And we're closing in on, I think February of 2021 will mark my 21st year in some capacity.
Wow.
So I started in February of 2000. Actually, my tryout was in January of 2000, but I became officially, signed into the school in February. And it was at a place called Suplex U out here in Rochester, done by a promotion called New Millennium Wrestling. To go back even farther, it kind of, where it got to New Millennium Wrestling, there was like another indie promotion or two like before, and run kind of by the same group of people, but run 3 months here and then stop and then pop up again and run 3 more months and then it would go away and then there would be a random school and then the school morphed into this and then this money mark met this money mark and I was indie wrestling, especially back then in those days. But the and I laugh now because 20 years to teach you a lot.
Yeah.
But the big coup about this school in Rochester was that you would be trained by a former WWF superstar. And you're like, but if you weren't a hardcore watcher, you know, and you just tuned in about 96, 97 when the Monday Night Wars were going and everybody was watching Stone Cold or watching Goldberg, you know, if you're a teenager that just turned in, you're thinking this, you're like, oh, former WWF super, who could it possibly have been? Could it have been maybe Duke the Dumpster Droese, or, you know, like one of those guys that are just kind of like on the cusp of being a part of the Attitude Era and then they just dropped, but they're still fresh enough in people's minds. Like you would think that, right? And so I go and my tryout is with former WWF superstar Barry Hardy. And for those of you without any reaction to Barry Hardy, he was a 1980s, 1990s job guy.
High class job guy.
In the WWF, and he wasn't even a good one or a well-liked one. Everybody liked his partner, Dwayne Gill, better known as Gilbert. But you know, to a 19-year-old kid at the time, who was probably 130 pounds, including pimples, you know, I'm being told I can actually do this thing that I've always loved doing. And holy carny. Because, like, the first 2 months consisted of the international, which is, you know, or first you start, like, you run the ropes. You run the ropes crisscross or whatever. Then you do the international, which is collar and elbow tie-up, headlock, shoulder tackle, drop down, leapfrog, hip toss, arm drag, body slam, and then you stop, and then the other person has to do the same sequence. And then we would get out of the ring, and we would watch all the veterans and the Barry Hardys fuck around in there and do nothing. So that was like the first 2 months, and it sucked. But again, I was a young and impressionable kid, and I got in the ring, I got to at least do that. So, I pretty much from Barry Hardy, I learned, the international. That was it. That was all. That's the only thing Barry Hardy contributed to my development, my early development. Barry did not want to drop the strap because he was, of course, you know, the head trainer and the head booker and all that stuff and whatever. So of course he was the champion.
What? That doesn't happen in wrestling?
Yeah, it doesn't happen in wrestling. I don't know. I think it was something to the effect of he wanted more money. He didn't want to drop the belt, so they kept the belt. So they got him to keep the belt, but they said they wanted him to, you know, continue to be the head trainer, and he didn't want to do it anymore. He wanted more money, and they weren't going to give him more money for it because all the kids were doing were just the international and leaving, and that was that. So Barry ended up quitting being the trainer, and then they had a falling out, and they stripped the belt from him.
Who owned?
It was a guy by the name of Gary Steinmiller, an old insurance guy. So
Money Mart.
Yeah,
1.0.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so the next head trainer is the guy that I credit as my trainer, and that man is H.C. Loke.
Oh.
Loke took over, instant upgrade from what was there before. Like instant upgrade. Like we got on Loke's first day as that trainer at that school, we got to the building. The promoter wasn't there yet to open the door. And we opened the door, and the ring is completely taken apart. No fucking idea why. There was no show that was run that weekend or whatever. Just the ring was fucking torn apart. But Loke had this presence about him, and he was also refereeing at ECW at the time.
Yeah.
Just before ECW closed.
Yeah.
But Loke had this presence about him that we were kind of like, you know, we were instantly drawn to him. And so we got in there, and first thing we did was we fucking set up that ring. And as soon as we set up that ring, we got in there, and Loke broke it down. I don't know that I can appropriately articulate just exactly how good of a trainer H.C. Loke is. or was. I don't know if he's still training now.
Still, he's training guys left and while this quarantine thing happened. He's actually got a ring set up and is having some of the kids down by Binghamton come up and work in his ring.
Yeah, I cannot and this was 20 years ago, so Loke was even younger then, you know. Yeah. And Loke is not much older than I am. He looks it, but
yeah.
He's not much older than I am. But in the same, like, he dissected move sequences and looks and positioning and footwork. He dissected all of it just perfectly, and it made sense to me. And it resonated with me. And I always, every time, you know, I had I started moving up in cards around and about here, Albany, wherever the hell we would wind up. I would always make sure to tell him whenever I saw him, thank you for the knowledge. Thank you for the knowledge. And even up until recently, my last big-ish appearance as JC Money was at Salute to Pro Wrestling Night in 2019 at Frontier Field. And it was me co-hosting the event with the Red Wings' Grant Anderson, and the special guest was Jerry the King Lawler. And me and the King had a segment, and I hung with him, and Tony Schiavone was there, and it was fun. It was cool. The year before was Mick Foley. I famously jobbed to the Red Wings bird on the first baseline.
Putting over the bird.
Before all of them, I would either I shot a message to Loke, or I would send him, even still to this day, when something comes up, whether it's a voice acting opportunities, or getting emails from people interested in through a connection from a family member in this avenue as well, but they've seen my work, like different kinds of modeling and acting kind of things, like just over the course of time. Anytime I've appeared on a radio or, a lot of that is because of that guy, because of what he taught me in the ring, not just wrestling fundamentals, but also what to look out for behind the scenes and just in real life. Like, he was just a really cool dude. So that was a very long-winded way of saying, fuck Barry Hardy, Loke's my trainer.
I've had the pleasure of working with Loke a couple of times in Excite, because he's been coming down. So, and every time it's like, it's shocking how there are guys that are vets, and then there's guys like AC Loke. There's absolutely a whole realm between the two. And Loke is like that. To Krieger's credit, Krieger taught me when I first started. So I've always had that kind of relationship with him as well, because he was able to break stuff down for me. And as a, even then, 270, 280 pound guy that could barely move, I was still able to do things in the ring that shocked a lot of people.
Krieger retrained me for a 2016 comeback.
Yeah. So
I worked exclusively with him. I wanted to get back in the ring shape, and I'm not one of these, these guys that are, because there was a crop of them, and sadly they were, some of them ran in the same circles of the UWC that I did. Tiger Smith, he's stop. We're fine now. But he kind of had, without openly saying it, or maybe he did openly say it, but it was like he took him and other people took the terminology seniority very literal. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you were in the wrestling for 1 minute, or wrestling for 10 years or whatever, if he had a minute's advantage on you, he, or people like that mindset, don't think that anybody beneath them has anything to offer them. You know what I mean? Like they know everything, you know nothing kind of bullshit. And I'm not saying that to slam on them. I'm just saying, trying to articulate that there is, and there was, and I don't know if there still is now, but there's very much a mindset that, you know, time in title and time in the business equals nobody can teach. You can't teach an old dog new tricks or anything like that.
Yeah.
I was never like that. And when I was supposed to come back in 2016 to wrestle Tripp, Mark was the guy I wanted to train with because he was catching fire. He was freaking everywhere. And a camera just fell. I just bored the shit out of Ryan over there.
Ryan's lost. It's over.
So there he is. Fell just like Barry Hardy's training.
Wow.
But I don't know where I was going with it, but so basically, Mark is, you know, younger in the business in me, but so much more advanced from his experiences in areas that I hadn't been in the business. Why wouldn't I take advantage of that? You know, not only that friendship, but his knowledge if he's willing to share that. So
yeah.
It really didn't matter to me, anything like that. And even to this day, I still look at a lot of the younger crop now that I'm watching, and I'm studying very hard. People like Kevin Bennett. You know, I'm a big fan. I'm probably going to cry big tears if and when that guy is signed.
It will be a win. It will be a win.
He needs to be.
Yeah.
But I watch, you know, him and all those other guys down there to see, because, you know, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be 40 next week, and I've been out of active competition for a few years now, and I know I can still do it. Now, I probably can't do it at the way that, you know, Bennett and them do it, but I can certainly steal one of their moves. They got a lot of them. I could steal one and put it up and be like, look at my old ass can do this. And then cry about how much it hurt after.
Well, I mean, if you look at the generation of wrestlers that's currently out there right now, the age has gotten so much, you know, higher. You know, guys like Jericho still killing it out there. You know, and even on the WWE side, I mean, Taker's 55, and he just decided to walk away this year. Mm-hmm. So I mean,
I don't want to be that guy that, you know, hangs around or takes a spot from somebody that's young. But then, you know, there's that story, but then there's also, well, if there were anybody that were, you know, better, if they were a better option, they wouldn't have to book me, or they wouldn't have to, or they wouldn't be considering booking a 40-year-old guy that wasn't trained by Barry Hardy. You know what I mean? So there's two sides to that coin. Like, I don't, at this point where I am at life, I don't need to be the indie darling that has to be the champion in the main event or anything like that. But if I could personally challenge myself to have good matches still, right, you know,
and frankly put people over.
I don't care about any of that shit, man. I really don't. Like, and it would be cool to be able to do that, or at least say that I did that in my 40s at least once, but probably more than once. But if it doesn't happen, and my last match turned out to be against Eric Wolf, I'm very Eric Amenon. I'd be very happy with that too. Very content with that too. So,
what do you consider the high point of your personal, of your career, but from a personal standpoint? You know, what moment do you consider your high point in your career?
I mean, I guess it would be the Brody match. There was a stretch of a few months where Next Era was, you know, doing their best to compete with NWA Upstate at the time, UPW, they're known as nowadays. But I think by that point in time, like maybe the hard feelings or whatever started to die down a bit because some UPW guys were coming over to NEW and working with our guys and everything. And
what year was that?
2009.
Okay, so that was after the 2CW Upstate angle?
Oh, yeah. That the 2CW and Upstate happened in
07.
05, I think.
Was it that early?
I think no. I'm sorry. NEW and 2CW tried to do something in 2005, and then that didn't work out for some reason. But 2CW at that point wasn't what 2CW. And
yeah, they were tiny at that point.
They were like a small little, local Syracuse thing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize 2CW became what it became until, it hit that point. Like, I didn't think of 2CW as the super indie that it had become, because it wasn't in 2005. And then I think they did something in 2007, but at that time, UPW was running as NWA Upstate, and they were just freaking rocking it. Like, I hated it. I hated, the ownership, but, they were putting on, I mean, there was I think Corey Graves was there as Sterling James Keenan. Mm-hmm. Cesaro was there at one point. Brody was one of the main guys there. I mean, it just seemed like every month there was another like super indie guy coming there, and then 2CW and them did their thing. I think that was 07 too. And then I personally didn't pay much attention to 2CW or what was going on until I think they booked Roddy Piper. And I think it was like a Piper's Pit or something like that.
Yeah, that was an interesting show. If you're a huge 2CW fan and you're listening to us, first of all, thank you. Second of all, go check out Chris Lovin's Remembering 2CW podcast. He talks about the story of Roddy Piper and the entire shit show that was that show.
Well, I was super bummed. I didn't actually get to go to that show, but from that point, I paid attention to 2CW and what was happening there and watching the content that they were putting out, and I became a fan of it. And then I don't know, I found myself on some 2CW like board or something like that, and there was a lot of 2CW fans that commented on there. Maybe through similar friends, maybe they're just really smart and awesome.
That fans. They know more about wrestling than Brody Lee.
They know more about wrestling than me. But they like a bunch of them knew who I was, and I had not stepped foot there. And they were like totally like cool and we busting each other. We're busting each other's balls, and if I started shitting on UW, then they would jump on hardcore. They were right. They had my back throughout all that shit. So I may not have wrestled at 2CW, but the 2CW fan base, they have a very, very soft spot in my heart for having my back, and just they were cool. So
2CW fans were nothing if not loyal.
Oh yeah. But they didn't know. I had never wrestled there, but maybe maybe they wanted to see me there, or maybe just I have a lot of friends that are there, and so I pop up on a lot of comments and things like that. But our paths have crossed through social media, and when UW started their shit with me, and I fired back and all that stuff, they were right there to basically say "fuck UW" along with me, which was pretty dope. Yeah.
So let's kind of
to answer the question, because we got off there, but that whole stretch of time between 09 and 10, I was wrestling. I wrestled Cheech and Cloudy in a tag team match 1 month. Then the next month, I was in a match with Brody, Cheech and Cloudy, and Jimmy Olsen, which was fun as hell.
Yeah.
And then I think the month after that, I worked some guy in Buffalo. From Buffalo. I can't remember his name. He's a nice guy, and we had a good match, but it wasn't my favorite. But then after that, it was Brody for the title. And then I had Brian Emmett on the following show, which was not a good match.
I keep forgetting that he wrestled too.
Yeah, but so then it was Brian Emmett on, and then a month after that was Colin Delaney, and he had just got released from WWE in like late 2009.
Yeah,
and his 90 days had come up, and for the no compete. And then they put him, they were like, I think it was maybe like 3 days beforehand, because we weren't sure if Brody was going to be in town, because I think Brody was going to Japan, may or may not have been going to Japan. We weren't sure, but They were building towards me and Brody again for a rematch. And then Brody ends up going on tour in Japan, and Colin hit his 90 days, and they're like, you want to come in and work JC Money? And Colin's like, okay, here's, this is what this is the money I whatever. I don't know how that all worked out. And then he called me and told me, you got Colin. I'm like, cool. So I would say from a career wrestling standpoint, that stretch of time in 2009, from like maybe June of 2009 through late January 2010 was probably my favorite time.
So let's fast forward and a little change gears. Let's talk about the GERE Network. So, forgive me if I don't have the dates correctly, but it was 2014 you started GERE Network?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so what started all that?
So I go as far back in radio, podcasting, all that type of stuff. All the way back to 2009, was when I used to be a fan of the old Don and Mike show,
Okay.
on terrestrial radio. And then Don Geronimo, Mike O'Mara had a split or something, or no, Don's wife died. That's what, and Don lost his smile and he ended up leaving. Mike O'Mara took over, and created the Mike O'Mara show in its time slot. I was very interested in getting into radio at that time because besides wrestling, I was, working my normal 9-to-5 job, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted to, try to go get to any sort of super indie level or make a long time career out of it or whatever. And, talk radio, like not Howard Stern shock jock, but Don and Mike, ball busting,
Right.
airplane, make it done type of humor, radio talk, like that was funny to me. And I wanted to do that. So I started, reading up on, how to get in, and I was looking at going into school at that time for it. And then, the radio affiliate that hosted the Mike O'Mara show was going all sports. And in fact, a lot of that was changing. Like it was either going to be all news or all sports or all this. And it wasn't like room for normal variety shows anymore, apparently, in the AM terrestrial radio world. So Mike O'Mara and his crew started up the Mike O'Mara Show podcast. That was my first introduction into podcasts in general. Like I knew that they were out, but I never fucks with them,
Right.
And then Mike O'Mara went there, and then I realized, okay, well, this seems pretty cool and seems like it's really fun to do. I'd love to do it. I just didn't have the equipment. I didn't have the software. I didn't have any of the freaking knowledge at all. So I hurt my shoulder in 2009, and I still continue to wrestle and still continue to bowl tournaments and still continue to work out and basically be really stupid and not get my shoulder looked at. And well, what happened was I made it worse, and I ended up having a full labrum tear, around my shoulder. So they had to operate on it. Just two little inserts here, and then they do their thing and whatever. I don't know. I never slept better than when I was on the operating table, therefore. But so I had my shoulder surgery done. And, at that time I was laid up, and I was like, look at, God forbid something happens when I'm out on disability, and they decide, cause how corporate America works. They decide it's not they're not going to cover you. They're not going to deal with it. and they let you go, what do I have to fall back on? Like, I have to start over. I didn't have a college degree. Mm-hmm. I lucked into the role that I was in at the company that I worked for at the time. And I kind of just started at that point growing up. So I ended up going back into school, and I went for broadcast and journalism with a minor in English. And because I speak English, right? Because it's so easy. And then they give you all the other shit, all the other literature thing. And you're like, okay, great. Oh, I got an expanded vocabulary out of it, which is great. But
yeah, Ryan, we speak English here.
Yeah, we don't speak that English.
America.
We don't speak no Canadian.
Canadian.
So I ended up going to school and picking up a few things through courses and this, and then kind of just read different books and all that kind of stuff, and what happened was it was filling the void that I left with wrestling. I didn't really have any desire to come back to wrestle at that point in time in 2012 or 13 rather. Now by this point, I didn't have any desire to do that because I wanted to see wanted to spend my weekends with my little daughter, and at the time, and incidentally, I'm so glad I did because I don't trade being a dad for the world, but there was still the creative part of me wasn't being satisfied. I was Mr. Mom and Dad, so I'm driving one kid, the kids to practice, and I'm going to this game and I'm going to that game, and then I'm home to, play with the kid and all that stuff. And I enjoyed being a part of my kid's life. And I did that, but the creativity wasn't there. So Tiger Smith started his podcast network. I don't know how or why. You could always ask him. I'm
Tiger
sure
Smith. Why did he be the best podcaster in the world?
I bust his balls about his style of podcasting all the time. But, all the time. Like, I don't talk to him all the time, but when I do, I make sure to let him know that I, check out his podcast every now and then. And,
give him shit for it.
But anyways, he wanted me to join his network at that time. So I went, and I did like a podcast or two with him where we were semi in character, talking about really Buffalo wrestling, because Buffalo was the only place that would book him at the time. And I had fun with it, but I didn't want to do it in his vision. Cause I didn't necessarily agree with his vision. It had nothing to do with, political or anything like that, cause he wasn't even into politics at that time. And it just, my vision of creating a network was not specifically to buddy. You know what I mean? Like make it contingent on whether or not people want to come hang out with me. It was my vision from my network, and what I wanted to do was create as close to a radio station as possible. In terms of quality, in terms of just content, and to provide a platform for like-minded people, like-minded creators, to explore what they want to do in this world. For as much ball busting as there is, I'm sure with you guys and all, if you guys didn't have fun doing it, you wouldn't be here. Right. You wouldn't be doing it. It's an outlet. It's a healthy way to express yourself. And I have fun with it, because then, you go off the rails or whatever, like you then find out whether or not you yourself are as funny as you think you are, or as entertaining as you think you are. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm hilarious.
And usually when you get the positive feedback, that, that's always good. And so I kind of know my audience and know what pops them. And right now it's robocalls.
Yeah.
Answering robocalls.
Yeah.
But it was to fill the void. To get back to the original question, it was to fill the void that I left with wrestling, and I didn't get hurt doing it, and I, enjoy doing it. I don't dread when I have an idea for a podcast or I have an idea for the show that I want to do, whether it's a sports show with either Brandon or with the Buffalo Bills talk show with Ryan, Trust the Podcast, or the JC Money Show or whatever. This one, Mm-hmm. I enjoy doing this, but I enjoy doing it in the vision that I have, not in someone else's vision.
Right.
His vision was more like, he heard one person say, you can't have any dead air on radio. And it's true to a certain extent. You can't have a certain amount of time of dead air just sitting there on the radio just because. But that doesn't mean you can skirt that by playing shitty music continuously in the background of your podcast, which is what he wanted for all of the podcasts on his network at that time.
Yeah.
And BLTD is Ryan Wolf and Mr. Perez. They do sports talk, the Better Live Than Dead podcast. Yeah. Ryan is the vice president of GERE. But Ryan and Perez, the BLTD was initially on that network as well, and Tiger didn't watch sports, so if it was boring to him, well, it had to be boring to his audience. Whereas Ryan's trying to, get to a sports audience, and instead of thinking of growing the audience and expanding, it was kind of at that time he was very okay. Well, if it's boring me, it's going to bore the 3 people that listen.
Hey, that's 3 times the listeners that we have. Okay.
That is not true, and I can verify that.
The multitude of fans.
That is not true. Although, if there is one piece of feedback I have heard about this podcast, is that oftentimes it is too long.
You're darn tootin' it is.
That is the one piece of feedback I seem to hear.
Yep.
And I'm here to tell you, I am doing it no fucking justice. I am talking and talking and talking. I don't even think Ryan has said a word.
He's a Canadian bitch, but.
I love Canada. No, I'm not saying this to kiss his ass. I love that country. I love the country, and I cannot wait till I can go visit her again.
The funny thing is, Sleazy and I had talked about, he's like, oh, the podcast's too long. I go, I don't care. We're going to talk. Like, people are going to listen. They're going to listen. And that's the same feedback we had, too, that it's too long. And I'm just like, eh.
Right, but here's the thing. Are you guys having fun doing it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I'm very appreciative of the listeners. I'm very appreciative of anybody that supports this or the other networks, BICBP out in Buffalo, what Matt Johnson and them are doing. Mm-hmm. I'm fully in support of that because he has a very similar vision. The difference is, I'm more 100% remote. I don't want the whole hands-on, thing like he's got. He's building something great over there. Me, I'm just, like anybody else that's on here, just enjoying ourselves and, taking it serious enough to continue to improve it, but not serious enough to make it like to bully people into, right. listening to our shows or things like that. Like it's all fun. And that's kind of what I wanted to project, when and really to live, when I created GERE. So, GERE started about a week or 2 after my daughter Emma was born. I was home for 5 weeks on paternity leave. And so, baby would be here and I'd be here learning this software and I'd be here learning this software. And all the while thinking at some point I'm going to eventually make it into radio. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, I don't know, as GERE started growing and the followers started coming and, I was, GERE grew very quickly, like much quicker than I had thought it would have, almost overnight. I think I put out a podcast where I shit on Warpath. Just like, I don't remember exactly what the hell he said, but it pissed me off pretty good. I think it was, he made a crack and he called something about GERE Network being nowhere close to having the amount of the following that MFW has or some shit like that. I don't know. But I put out a shoot podcast on that, and I don't know if that caught fire or whatever, but all of a sudden, I found that we had our numbers collectively skyrocketed, follows and this and that. And I'm not saying me shitting on Deacon was the reason for it, but or Warpath rather, not Deacon. I'm not saying that was the sole reason for it, but I'm also not ruling it out either.
Yeah.
Thanks for the free advertising.
You're very welcome.
Well,
you got the free you got the thing back there, the banner back there, which is advertising the network. But just so you know, when I do the JC Money Show or when I do listen in the podcast and I do the video casts on there, like there's two separate levels with that. There's the audio feed, which I've sold to advertisers. I've sold airtime to advertisers, so you actually get like legitimate advertisements during the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But like on the video cast, you don't get that. So I make sure to include you guys and the All Bets Are Off podcast with Robbie Vegas as commercial advertisements in those video casts. It also gets fed over to the audio cast too. So the podcast people, they'll get like a Dunkin' Donuts commercial and then they'll hear you two knuckleheads talking about your show, but it's all, and it just incidentally is because you two are the only two podcasts who have commercials for me. So,
well, let's talk about kind of how we came together. We were working nearly 6 years at this point, back in 2018.
By the way, this is our 8th anniversary.
Yeah, by the by. This
surprise.
Hey.
You know what? It's 8th anniversary. I'm over here drinking water. Hold on.
Oh boy. Here it comes.
We're going 3 hours again, boys.
Oh, this is going definitely 3. And frankly, I don't give a shit at this point. So, but
I'm just saying, like last time.
This calls for the high life.
Ooh, I've got because they haven't sponsored us. I have Hills of water runoff, I guess.
What the hell are you talking about?
Mountain Dew.
Poland Springs. Oh,
okay. Just say the fucking name.
They don't sponsor me. Damn it.
Anyways,
he's all paranoid that
8-year anniversary. Awesome.
He's all paranoid that if we're on YouTube that he's going to get shut down because they have a Mountain Dew symbol.
No. I want them to pay us for their advertisement. Thank you
You'll
very
suck their
much.
dick, I know.
I will suck their dick. Please give me
For Kickstart.
Please. For Kickstart, I'll take it. Just one a day. I'm good.
Mountain Dew, you are on the clock.
I just want to start that whole gimmick that
Mike will suck yo binga.
This has been like a running gag for like a year now.
Yes.
That's cool.
Well, I mean, look at what.
Listen, I'm all about improv. I found out on the GERE Network happy hour that we did that I impromptu decided to start recording. I was very drunk. I can't lie. I was too happy in that fucking happy hour.
Yeah.
And there was like a bunch of us on GERE Network on there. Not you, fat man, but
I'm never invited to anything.
that was when bullshit. You were invited. You're on that goddamn staff page.
I was probably working.
Yeah.
Working.
Lyle Avenue.
Lyle Ave needs some workers, bro. Come on.
So that was when I found out, really, the improv ability of one Sleazy Mike, and I've grown to appreciate that.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. So we took the show to you. The reason why I took it specifically to you, and I'm not even sure if you know this, was because
I do not. I remember you messaging me.
Yes.
And then I think Fat Man might have messaged me too. If I'm not, I could be wrong, but I definitely know you did.
Yes. So the reason why that started was because like a year before, Mark House had a podcast called The house call.
The house party podcast.
Yes. Well, the video was the house call.
Yes, yes.
So house.
The video. Yeah. I remember the video.
He had two of them. But the audio one, he shopped to you. I was on his second episode.
Yes.
And I had never heard of the Gear Network before then. And we were at the point where we were like, is this something we really want to keep doing? Is this something that because we were kind of getting in a rut a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I was like, fuck it. We need to find a way to just increase our user base and try and branch out and try and get us a reason to be more creative. So I was like, fuck it. Mark knew you. I knew Mark. I asked Mark about it. He's like, yeah, just hit him up. I'll vouch for you. And we got talking, and I'm pretty sure you messaged Mark or Mark messaged you or something of that nature, because I know he vouched for me for the show.
Yeah, he you had messaged me first, and I think I said let me think about it. I'm pretty sure I put you in a holding period.
Yeah.
And well, I was busy. That was why I put you in a holding period. It was for no other reason than I was busy at the time. I couldn't really, focus on that. And then I forgot. So, then I think Mark messaged me or no, you messaged me again as a follow-up. And then I was like, oh shit. And then I messaged Mark and was like, hey, these guys cool? You say they're cool? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And he starts, kind of giving the rundown. I was like, no, stop. I said, do you say they're cool? He said, yeah, they're cool. And I was like, all right, then they're cool with me. And that was when I messaged you back, and well, here you are.
Rest is history.
Rest is history.
So, obviously, we always want to, give thanks to you for taking us on. I feel like that our show has progressed so much under the Gear Network banner. We've done so many things since then because of it. We did the podcast-a-thon 2 years now. Being able to do a live taping, that was unheard of. 3 years ago, we were like, two assholes, $3 mic, talking shit about wrestling, and it's gotten so much bigger since then, with Ryan and Travis up in Newfoundland, and Chip and Brandon Dietz, out there. Look at him with the Queen Wave. Good for you. But being able to branch out, do different shows. Fat Man had a sports podcast at one point. This was before Gear Network, but he was doing other stuff. We were doing stuff. It really, that time frame and getting into the Gear Network just helped us so much. And for that, we really, really do thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate the kudos and the thanks and all of that. That was what my vision was. That was what I had wanted that to mean something to somebody, because I would have appreciated something like that. But as much as I would love to take all of the credit for it, and I probably should, but I won't, realistically, I only provided a platform. You guys did all the work. You did all the get-togethers. You did all the watch-alongs. You did the PodCon, the first one that was actually allowed to be in person. You did all of that. That wasn't me. I just provided a platform. I didn't write your podcast for you. I didn't tell you who to have and have. No, that's a lie. I told you can't have Terry Cadillac on. Terry Cadillac's on a network band. He can't be on any podcast.
That was never going to happen to begin with.
But I don't write your podcast for you. I don't tell you what to do or how to do it. And, I let you guys express your creativity very freely. Because I would have appreciated that same platform, that I didn't have to create my own. You know what I mean? Like, if I could just do what I do and not have to worry about any of that other crap, cool. You know what I mean? But I found that I enjoy the executive producer aspect of it, and the trying to, sell advertising, and the trying to expand on partnerships and affiliations and all that behind the scenes off air stuff. So if I ever say I'm not, if I don't put out a podcast for a month or two or whatever, it's not because I've lost interest. It's because the behind the scenes stuff really take up a lot of time, but I don't hate doing it. So I know I could comfortably transition out of an on-air role and be just as happy in an executive producer role, in GERE Network as I would be on air. But you guys build your brand. You guys build your names. You guys, you don't discredit the work that all of you collectively put into this. You joked about Fat Man earlier, with his OCD before we went on air, but I would love to have an OCD producer. You know what I mean? To be like, okay, no, this is the time we got to hit. We got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. Mm-hmm. And stick to it, because then you can get a knucklehead like me that just fucking rambles and thinks that's great. But like, that's a, it's work. It's work that you all collectively put in. And I think you should, 8 years, regardless of whether or not it was 2 on the GERE Network, you had 6 before that.
Yeah. You
did something right.
Yep.
Thanks.
Meaning that fat fucking middle school.
Yeah.
So, John, I'm going to throw a curveball at you, and this has been a hot topic. The whole Zelina Vega firing thing. We talked about it the last couple shows. I want to get your take on it. I tried to get an employment lawyer on here to discuss it with us also about what it means with unionization, if I could speak tonight. Mm-hmm. But I want to get your take on it, because the more I'm reading about it, the more I fucking hate what they're doing.
Well, am I giving a take on the Zelina Vega situation, or am I
the whole because the unionization thing? How about that? I think the Zelina
Vega thing wound up being because she didn't want to give up her Twitch account, which she absolutely should not have had to do in the first place. Mm-hmm. None of them should have had to do, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of their income that they bring in, there's a guarantee. I'm no legal analyst, and I don't pretend to have inside knowledge, but common knowledge would say that there's got to be on that deal that you sign with WWE some guarantee. So a guarantee minimum, that you are going to make. And then there's added extras on top of that. How many house shows you work, merchandising, and other appearances and things like that. So if you sign a base salary of $550,000 a year as a base performer, right? Your salary could, through the additional revenue and all of, the licensing and making the shows and this and that, your salary at minimum may be $550,000, but you could pocket, you could end up at $900,000 or $1 million a year or whatever, depending on how hard you work. That's kind of like at least that's what makes sense to me is how, based on some of the older school contracts that are public record that you are able to research. Mm-hmm. That's, I believe, how the structure would be. Then COVID hits and it literally takes away all of that. Mm-hmm. There's no house shows going on. Merchandise is only online. You're not making appearances, physical appearances at Comic Cons. You're not making appearances at a freaking grocery store opening or anything like that. You're not doing any of that. So as a way to supplement that, your fan base still wants to see you and still wants to interact with you. What better way to do it than a Cameo or a Twitch or Zoom meetings or things like that, like something to help branch yourself out and help keep additional income coming in, because you may be making $550,000 a year, but if you've gone on consecutive years and years and years of the additional revenue coming in and you're living off of a $900,000 or a $1 million a year salary, and you're budgeted to live at that salary level, going down to a $550,000 minimum is a big hit to them, you know. And yeah, I know. Oh, you should be doing this with your money. You should be doing that with your money. But if you play dumb games, you win dumb prizes. If you don't, in wrestling history, wrestling historically has not been filled with rocket scientists that know what to do with their money and know what to do with, their health and things like that. Obviously, it's much better now, but there may be some instances where, under normal circumstances, you're banking $1 million a year, and now all of a sudden, almost half of that is gone. And, so you're trying to recoup some of that by taking advantage of Twitch and, these type of streaming services and things like that. So for WWE to come in and say, you can't have these anymore,
while being more profitable than they've ever been without house shows.
Right. Without house shows, they're producing in their own, they're producing a lot of content, a lot of specialty matches that are movie quality from the freaking Performance Center. They rent out the Amway Center. Now I think they're going to be renting out Tropicana Field.
Yep.
To put up the Thunderdome, and that's Tropicana Field. They're not hosting baseball games right now.
Nope.
And they weren't, and they don't host baseball games anymore, as a matter of fact, because the Rays play somewhere else now. I think.
Nope.
Within Tampa, I think they have their own stadium now.
No, I think it's still Tropicana Field.
Is it still Trop? Is it still the Trop? Maybe it is. Mm-hmm. But Amway Center, they didn't have the NBA, so they needed whatever they could get. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they struck a deal with WWE to just keep everything set up there for a bit, and same thing with the Trop, because the baseball season doesn't start until February, pitchers and catchers, and they won't be at Tropicana Field in theory until April. Mm-hmm. So it's great for them, but it sucks for the talent because they're being nickel and dimed out of additional income that they could be using during this pandemic to make up for not making the towns and not doing this. So I'm not a fan of that. And the fact that Zelina Vega was like, fuck you, I'm not giving up my shit. And, she got released. And if that indeed was the reason for the release, then good for her for standing up for herself, and shame on WWE for that.
Yeah.
If it turns out that there is truth to the unionization thing, that she liked, she liked that tweet or whatever that suggested it, and they fired her based on that, then fuck WWE, because wrestling should have been unionized back in the 80s.
I think she released that tweet after she got released. So, and then WWE announced it. So I think she purposely did that just to fuck
the rumor on why she got fired is because she started an OnlyFans page, which was blatantly.
Yeah, so she was
like, don't do it.
Yes, yeah. So she was on Twitch. They told her not to be on Twitch anymore, and apparently she made more money on Twitch than she did on her downside, guaranteed. That's the rumor. So, and then they told her. Then they did the whole third party things, and then they said. Then she made a fan only page, and then they're like, "You can't do that," and then that's when she pretty much said, "Fuck you." I got some news on here, so
I'm going to join her OnlyFans page then.
Sleazy sent it to me because she's my third favorite.
Oh my god, I have such a huge crush on her.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
Aleister Black is one lucky dude.
Yes, he is. And it said no nudes, and I'm like, I'm not interested. Anyway, in regards to WWE Twitch situation, where the company, sorry, I'm reading this right off a screenshot, has prohibited talent from engaging third-party companies, according to...
Fuck Dave Meltzer.
Thank you. Suggests that despite all the public grumbling and some wrestlers even talking to Andrew Yang, it doesn't appear as though it's going to lead to any sort of union of wrestlers.
This has been a topic that's been swirling around for a long time, so much so that our live show was about unionization of wrestling.
This was a year ago.
Yeah, this was over a year ago. This was nearly a year and a half ago now.
Apparently, wrestlers have to relinquish their Twitch accounts, but they can still market themselves on YouTube.
I think part of the reason why that was the case was, and this is the same thing with Cameo, is that they're starting to hit deals with Cameo. specifically, and I can see them doing the same thing with Twitch.
WWE just announced a deal with Cameo,
There you go.
which we talked about last show.
I think they had something with the Undertaker. And
Undertaker's on Cameo
it was like $1,000 cameo for the Undertaker.
for a message, not even a video, for a message.
Imagine that shit.
I'm a mark for Mark.
But that's Junior Vince taking care of his people. He took his people, like the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like Undertaker gave you, granted, 30 years of memories and matches and everything. You probably should take care of the guy. You know, but in the same kind of a douchey to do it at the expense of all the younger guys and gals that are trying to make that name. You know what I mean? And trying to stay afloat during a goddamn worldwide pandemic.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you're looking at the salary disparity between the male workers and the female workers, it's absolutely obscene.
That's any sport, not just wrestling.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
I
but
mean, you could see the graphics for the NBA all the time that there was one it was crazy because it said that one of the WNBA teams total salary for 2020 was like $26.7 million. In comparison, that was how much LeBron James made this year. You know what I mean? Like LeBron James himself.
yeah, that's
The
crazy.
entire payroll that the women's professional basketball team.
I don't want to be that guy and go down the rabbit hole, but the revenue that the NBA makes compared to the WNBA, it's based on revenue.
Well, yes, right. I
get that, but no, they probably
they're
still
run
are.
by the same entity.
Yeah, they're grossly underpaid.
So, but yes, I think they could pay them a little more, but
Oh yeah.
But I get
But-
it.
but with sorry to interrupt you again, but with WWE, the women are outperforming the men sometimes and outdrawing. Well, who's a draw nowadays? You don't even fucking know. There's no house shows, but the draw anymore, they're outperforming them. Why are they not getting paid as much or even sometimes more? Probably Charlotte might be.
There's 3 women on the roster currently. Well, 3 on the roster right now that make more than $550,000. Asuka's one, Charlotte Flair's another, and when Ronda was on the roster, she was making buku
Oh,
bucks.
Becky's not on that list?
She was
I would
until
think
she took
Sasha
off.
would be on there too.
Exactly.
I would.
Becky, Sasha, maybe even Bailey.
Bailey should be
I would
on
say
there.
Bailey
Yeah.
would have.
They're not.
I would argue Bailey was their best heel champion. Her heel turn was so good.
It was.
It was so good.
She turned into Karen.
Right, and she plays that role
Mm-hmm.
magnificently.
Mhm.
Like she completely did a complete 180 and did it all essentially in the same title reign, and like became a megastar, and that should be rewarded, and hopefully it is.
It mimics another long title reign. That
Shut the fuck up, Sleazy.
pretty much the same thing happened.
Shut the fuck up, Sleazy.
You know I'm going to say it.
I know you're going to say it 'cause
CM
you're an
Punk.
Asian fetish.
No,
I thought you were
no,
talking about
what?
Asuka.
No. We're not talking about the 914-day undefeated streak of Asuka.
Oh, okay.
But no, in all seriousness, CM Punk did the same thing. He started off his WWE title run of over a year, turning heel midway through it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's mirroring that progress, and she should be absolutely compensated for it. There's a lot of women that absolutely stepped up their game, especially post-pandemic. Asuka being one of them. Obviously, I'm going to be a huge mark for Asuka no matter what. LOL Asian fetish, but whatever. But
We know, Mike. We know.
But the reality is, she was amazing. Bailey was amazing. Sasha was amazing. The match, while it honestly could have been better. The Rhea Ripley Charlotte Flair match was great. It was one of the high points of WrestleMania that night.
All right. I think that when when the vaccine is distributed worldwide and things begin to regain some a semblance of normalcy, I think that, with AEW being a very legitimate place now.
Oh, they're just a t-shirt company.
Not that they weren't like legitimate before, but like now they've done enough to legitimize themselves as the 1B in here. I would call them 1A at this point, because anything I've seen, there's some of the things in AEW that I watch that I don't particularly care for, but overall, I think they respect the history of pro wrestling a little bit more than WWE does on a weekly basis, not on a historical basis, because WWE will play the history card mainly for NXT, and you can tell that's Triple H. But like when they actually start doing full shows again, I think it's going to be I think the fans are going to be what dictates everything that happens post-pandemic, which could bode very well for the females in both AEW and WWE, because there's a decent crop of ladies wrestlers on both rosters. And now, if they elevate their games in front of live crowds, different fan bases, now you have that leverage. If you're a Bayley and you're not being compensated by WWE, AEW will take you, because their fan base is going to go absolutely batshit when she comes out and confronts whomever the hell the champion is at that time. It's going to go batshit. People are going to go batshit, and they're going to want to watch.
There really hasn't been a second major company in decades. Once WCW
you have a Impact Mark right over here.
Yeah, fuck him.
Well, okay, so here's the problem with Impact. Not necessarily Impact of today. I think Impact of today is actually very enjoyable. But I was never really...
Thank you.
What's that?
Thank you. All the rest of these bitter, jaded fucks don't watch it or like it.
I watch it!
Well, it's not readily available, at least to me, as it was back in the TNA Impact days.
Yeah.
But the bits and pieces that I've seen of late has been very, very good. But I wasn't always huge on the Impact brand. A lot of that because during the TNA days, they were really trying too hard to be WWE light instead of being Impact. And they got away from that when Hulk Hogan joined, and they tried to move Impact to Monday night, and they went from the 6 side to the 4 side of ring because this is what professional wrestling is, brother. And it sucked. And that company, which was gaining momentum when you had, Christian there and Kurt Angle there, Sting at the tail end of his career was there, Samoa Joe was younger, AJ Styles younger, like they had a rock solid roster. They just made dumb moves and tried too hard to compete with WWE. I always said this, there was an episode of Impact that stuck out with me, and it was when the New Age Outlaws were on there. They were VKM Mafia or something like that. Mafia, something like that. And they were going to infiltrate WWE. And at the end of an episode of Impact, they showed Billy and Road Dogg in Stamford, Connecticut, and they close out. I'll never forget this. They closed out an episode of TNA Impact showing the WWE headquarters and their logo. The logo of their competition was the final thing you saw in that episode of Impact. And I know what they were going for, but the problem is that would have worked when the internet wasn't as widespread, and maybe 95, 90, 96, how it worked in WCW back then, because, it was America Online and everybody was on dial-up, and, they were spending their dial-up minutes trying to watch porn and not necessarily go to WCW.com for news.
Oh, I know.
So, that just stuck with me as they were trying too hard. And then when they started doing a lot of the gimmick matches, and they brought in Russo, and then they brought Hogan, they brought in Bischoff. I saw the Nasty Boys were there, and fucking Knobs' fat ass was waddling his way there, and I'm barely breathing, and Sags was blown up by the time he got in the ring, and I think they were wrestling the Dudleys, and I'm like, well, this is, it wasn't the Nasties versus Public Enemy of 1996 and 95 that were actually decent brawl matches. Like, they were trying to do that, and they weren't doing it, and it just, it sucked. But AEW now, because we've been void, the wrestling community has been void of a major threat, WCW-like threat to WWE for so many decades. Like, the fan base was craving it. And ROH, maybe Sinclair owns ROH, but they're too busy doing other shit. They don't really care about that. I think Don Callis now owns or runs Impact now.
He runs Impact, yep.
So I don't know what his finances are, but I would imagine it's more kind of a regional thing, hoping to kind of grow big again from there. But it's definitely super indie level. But you talk about having a major threat, somebody that could compete with Vince financially. Shad and Tony Khan got that money. They own the Jacksonville Jaguars. They own some soccer club in London. Mm-hmm. They're big ballers. And they're wrestling fans on top of that. Like, Tony Khan is a huge wrestling fan. So damn well when, if he's involved, he's going to be like, and he knows his history. He's not just a mark. He's like, my biggest moment was my thing that hooked me as a fan was WrestleMania 3 when Hogan and Andre were in there, and he was explaining that, like, he was talking like a true fan. He wasn't talking like, oh yeah, I loved wrestling back in the days of Gorgeous George, and yeah, I think it'd be fun to throw $10,000 here. Like, no, you could tell dude is into it.
Right.
So, AEW is like a legit threat to WWE as number 2. And when the pandemic ends and we can start having full shows again, the fans are really going to dictate whether or not it's truly a WWE universe.
Segue. WWE, this is rumor and innuendo, tells wrestlers that regular house shows would not be returning when the pandemic is over.
I don't necessarily think that's a terrible thing.
I think it's a mistake, especially when you have fans craving for a product that they can't. They've been sitting at home for a year.
Right.
When this is over.
But you know what that means, devil's advocate. They may not have more house shows now, but they may have more network specials. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you'll know all the Monday Night Raws will sell out because Wichita, Kansas may get a Monday Night Raw, but they know they're not going to get a house show in 2 months to maybe see, the Dominic
C level
Mysterio against Buddy Murphy, but they'll know they'll be able to go see Dominic Mysterio against Buddy Murphy on Raw, or I guess SmackDown now, but whatever. The point's the same. Now they can actually do more of these televised, like, special events and sort of go back to the future, so to speak, like, kind of dip into the past, like how they used to do with Spectrum Wrestling in the Philadelphia Spectrum, or Madison Square Garden Wrestling, or the Boston Gardens, like big events like that. Like, it wouldn't surprise me to see more of those kinds of specials pop up in the future instead of random house show. Like Starrcade will actually legitimately be a WWE Network special event that will sell out because there are no other events that are, on a Wednesday. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I completely disagree with them. I mean, it's the AEW model. They're not doing, they weren't doing house shows before.
No.
They were just doing Dynamite tapings, Dynamite and Dark tapings. Same thing.
Also, at the same time, though, WWE is a publicly shared company. So if they're just wasting the money that AEW probably is on talent, they got to see some kind of return. Well, they got TV money. So, yeah.
They're printing money no matter what.
Yeah.
You can also, too, sell these network specials to the BR Lives of the world if you want to go there. Or ESPN Plus may pick up a WWE special event in Las Vegas or something like that. You know, there's a
Saturday
lot
night
of
main
ways
event
that they could do that. I had read they didn't do this for the last WrestleMania because of the pandemic, but they were toying around with the idea of not only having it on WWE Network for network subscribers, but having the event for like non-subscribers, but it would be on like BR Live and ESPN Plus and other streaming services like that. They could legitimately do that, or alter WWE Network to where WrestleMania goes live on BR Live and ESPN Plus and all that stuff, and then immediately following it will be available for WWE Network subscribers if you don't want to watch it.
Right. I think Sleazy and I talked about this a couple of times. It's not a live event business anymore.
No, not anymore.
It's a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
It's a TV company now. Mm-hmm. So
it's exactly what it is. And in a lot, you know, the Boneyard match, well, it was proof positive of that. Mm-hmm. You know, the Undertaker got to do the match, and I mean, he said on the Steve Austin podcast that the biggest challenge for him was he would get in go mode, and then they'd cut, and then they'd have to move to the scene, and then his adrenaline would wear down, and then you have to get back up, you get it back up again, and things like that. That it was legitimate acting, but in the same, you know, you're not being thrown off the top of the cage in Hell in a Cell, so I guess like, you know, that affords the opportunity to still tell the wrestling story, but do it in a acting manner, like you would see in a sitcom or a movie or something with a stunt double or whatever. That could add some longevity. But yeah, you're right. It's not a house show business anymore.
And that's it, everyone, for the show tonight. Stay tuned for next week where we deal with part 2 of this episode. And as always, check out GERE Network, GERE-network.com, and check out thewrestlingshow.com. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Peace.
I'm a truth that you seem to run from. I'm an army of one. I'm a clip in your gun. I'm the pain in the game. The bloodshed in your name. When there's nothing to gain, I'm a world gone sad.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the GERE Network.